Hey guys, I'm Ryan Ludwig with Midwest Whitetail. Today I'm going to give you some tips and kind of give you the how-to on how to plant agricultural-based food plots. It can be one of the best ways to hunt late season, can have some of the best hunts in the world, see a ton of deer, pull that buck in, and also throughout the season, having corn and bean plots that the does are routinely feeding through kind of makes social hubs for bucks, and it can give you a chance, whether you're cutting them off coming from bedding to the feeding area, or maybe you have a blind on the feeding area. It's a great opportunity to get a deer and bow range pretty much all the way throughout the season. When I say ag plots, I'm talking corn, soybeans, and I'll throw sorghum into that mix as well. And there's various other cash crops, quote unquote, throughout the country. But where I'm at, and pretty much notoriously across the whitetail hunting space, those are your three main ones that people are going to plant for a food source. So step one when it comes to putting in an ag plot, selecting your location, and I think there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Obviously you want to have great access, pretty much whether it's a tree stand, a food plot, anything I'm setting up to hunt, it's going to be strategic for access. Second, I want to be as tight to the bedding as I can. The reason for that is you kind of maximize your daylight activity on your plot when you're tighter to the bedding. Even when it's not ideal conditions, you're giving yourself a chance at a deer in daylight because you're so close to the bedding. And that's why access is super important, because you want to be tight to the bedding. Now I realize sometimes you're kind of limited to where you can put your plots depending on how your property lays out, but that's step one, is selecting that location to maximize your time that you're going to put in the stand come fall. Step two is a pretty easy one. Let's select your seed. You know, all the following steps are going to depend on what seed you're planting. So if you're starting a new food plot, corn, beans, sorghum, each of them has slightly different needs as far as fertilizer and spraying go. That's going to roll us into step three, which is our soil samples. I think this is probably one of the most undervalued steps of any food plotting process, and especially when starting a new food plot. Obviously certain plants like certain types of fertilizer, but when it comes to your ground and maximizing the nutrition that your plant can get out of your ground, there's certain elements that you wouldn't know to enhance if you didn't do the soil test and know that. There's a ton of different things that play into that, but it's always a step that I recommend. Step four is where our work comes in. So we're going to prep our ground. Now, depending on what this could be, I'm going to combine mowing and spraying into one step here. If you have a lot of brush on there, go ahead and mow it and then let it regen for a week or two. Depending on whether you're planting corns or beans, you'll be in the April to May time frame. You can plant beans all the way into July though. So next step is fertilizing, and your soil test is going to tell you exactly what to do with that. So with corn, loves nitrogen. Same thing with sorghum. You're going to have to add a little heavy on that. Beans don't necessarily need nitrogen. They're legumes, so they're producing nitrogen and putting it back in the ground as they go. So that's something to keep in mind. Beans, I think, are a little bit better for your soil. Corn can be kind of hard on your soil. So when you're looking at reoccurring plants, you either want to crop rotate, fertilize heavy. You can kind of play with that and see how your ground is and go from there. As far as spraying goes, I keep it kind of simple. I do Roundup, 2,4-D, and some kind of pre-emergent. You know, after that, 2 weeks after you mow or however you do your plot, to let that regen come up and get a good kill. The great thing about most soybean and corn varieties, as soon as you spray, you can plant, or you can even plant and then spray. So it saves you a little bit of time. You can be at the farm one day, get all your work done, and go from there. And that rolls us into the next step, and that's planting. So there's a ton of different ways that you can plant corn and soybeans. Beans, you can even broadcast them if you prep your dirt and then compact it. Beans don't require that much depth, depending on your variety. It's around 3/4 of an inch. And really, in my experience, they'll grow a lot shallower than that and do just fine. Corn's a little bit trickier. It has to be 2 inches in depth at least, and depending on your soil moisture, there's a lot of things that go into that. But that's where drilling and having a corn planter will come into play, or knowing somebody that has the ability to do that. There's a lot of guys out there who put in food plots for people, and it just takes maybe a little asking around to find somebody around you to have that done. I personally recommend drilling. That's how I put in most of my food plots. When it comes down to it, I'm gonna drill beans, and you can even drill corn. Now, I personally don't have experience with that, but a friend of mine, he does land management for a living. He drilled in a ton of corn this year and it came up great. So I'm excited to see how that goes throughout the year. Once your seed's in the ground, you want to keep an eye on it. I won't lie to you, sometimes replants happen, whether that's browse pressure, whether it's dry conditions. You just got to keep an eye on it and know that replants doesn't mean you weren't successful. Stuff happens. We do it all the time. Even when you have good stands that come up, if you're not fencing your food plots, which is kind of our next step, you're going to deal with browse pressure if you have a lot of deer around, and that can really ruin a plot pretty quick. Progressively throughout the summer, as your weeds come back, after your pre-emergent wears off, you'll spray again. Now, depending what varieties you have in the ground, will depend what you spray. If it's Roundup Ready beans, obviously don't go spray 2,4-D on it, but Generally, I try to go towards agricultural beans, which are going to be Liberty, 2,4-D ready, Roundup ready. You can spray just about anything you need to on it. So I think clean plots are great plots. It helps your plants thrive and maximizes the yield you're going to have or the food for your deer. This next step is optional, and that's fencing your food plots. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. It's a lot of work, it's a little bit expensive, but if you want to make sure that you have the best food source come hunting season, if you're planting that plot for deer, it's hard to argue with not fencing them and just maximizing that ability to have that food there late season and throughout the year. And finally, I think this is something I kind of always try to say because I'm a pretty positive person. I like to have a good time. Just enjoy yourself when it gets to the season. You know, it's a lot of work to go through and make sure food plots are in top tier condition every year and make sure you have some kind of food there to keep the deer throughout the season. So enjoy that process through the fall. I hope some of these tips on planting ag plots specifically help you guys, and good luck.